The Save America Act may actually have a pretty stellar pathway forward. So as I said yesterday on the show, the current plan, which was to either break the filibuster, which you need a simple majority to break the filibuster. I'd pointed out there were 5 to 7 senators on the Republican side of the aisle, which have been very, very, very obstinate to doing anything. Now, this does not come without merit. You have guys like, for example, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who is rather upset because of a particular primary loss. And so he joined Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Rand Paul in a war powers resolution. Now, why as a Republican, why vote for a war powers resolution? It's very ceremonial, very symbolic. Why vote for that at all in the Senate right now? Well, the reason is that this is essentially a way of saying, I'm standing against President Trump. Now, here's what Senator Cassidy actually had to say about this, and it ties into the Save America Act stuff pretty directly. Check it out.
Yeah, the American people just need to know what's going on with Iran. And I don't think there's been sufficient information shared with Congress or with the American people. So that was my message.
How was that received by the president? Did this turn into a shouting match?
Well, voices were raised. Put it that way.
Any regrets on anything you said?
No.
Voices were raised, shouting match stuff. There is some shouting match stuff going on over in the Senate between Republican members, and it is necessary. It is good. It is a good thing. Because if you are going to be a Republican right now, which stands there and says, I'm not doing anything, you should have to argue that to the rest of the Senate, to the American people, and to the President of the United States, who is signing the laws that you put forward. Because there are a lot of things that some of the establishmentarian members of the party, your Mitch McConnells, your Tom Tillises, your Bill Cassidys, your John Cornyn's, your Lisa Murkowski's, your Susan Collins, and even, yes, occasionally your Rand Pauls, actually do want to see passed through. Now, excluding Rand Paul, there are a couple of bills that the President of the United States is refusing to sign right now because the Save America Act has been obstructed, meaning that there's no talking filibuster, there's no actual filibuster that's been broken, we haven't glued it to anything. It's a very popular bill with the American people, of course, because you just saw in the beginning of the show, all of the different federal judges that have directly attempted to intervene on the most basic election security measures that almost every other civilized country, countries that we like, countries that we don't like, friends and enemies, and the apathetic, all use. The United States has states that just choose not to do so. And so, for example, the President of the United States said today, quote, today's housing news conference and signing is hereby canceled until such time as we pass the desperately needed Save America Act, which I consider to be a national emergency. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald John Trump. And I, sitting there getting ready actually for a hit over on Newsmax, I'm sitting there on the camera shot, and I'm next to a foreign policy expert. And I watch as President Donald Trump then walks out with John Thune. And John Thune, the majority leader of the Senate, starts to kind of walk past the president because there's this crowd, almost this Formula One racing tire barrier of press waiting to ask the president and the majority leader of the Senate some questions. And John Thune starts to go into the left corridor. And Donald Trump reaches out with his hand and just kind of lightly, just a little kind of a, hang on there, John, hang on for a second. Let's talk to the press for a moment. And Thune kind of uncomfortably stands there as the president articulates very clearly, we ain't moving, we ain't going, we ain't doing a diggity darn thing until the Save America Act is on the record with senators, with the American people, which is the thing that Senator Mike Lee of Utah has been bringing up consistently, often to a lot of grief and a lot of complaints before the American people. This is what led to a pretty decent and significant breakthrough that I believe has given a new wind of life for the Save America Act. And you know that if I didn't think there was a pathway, I would tell you. I told you yesterday, the phrase I used was, and I quote, not a snowball's chance in hell. But if the snowball is caught before it finds its way to the fiery gates, then there just might be a little bit of saving grace for it. So let's talk about it. So Dr. Kevin Roberts over at the Heritage Foundation articulates this a lot better than I do. So he says, quote, the American people are demanding that Congress deliver on 2 major priorities before the midterms: the Save America Act and Reconciliation 3.0, meaning funding certain things, stripping the funding from certain things, actually making the economy more affordable and slashing some regulation. That's what's in regulation, or that's what's in the Reconciliation 3.0. He said, show votes aren't enough. Republicans must fight for both. How do you fight for both? The House has been slinging these things out of the House of Representatives into the Senate faster than Waffle House dishes up orders during rush hour. So he says, quote, the Senate must take up the Save America Act immediately and enforce the talking filibuster, or alternatively, must attach it to must-pass legislation. Election integrity cannot wait. So what's must-pass legislation? There's this bipartisan measure on housing. There's the FISA court stuff that a lot of Democrats and a lot of establishment, national security hawkish, some might call them kind of neoconservatives, neocons, want to pass through the Senate. And so the deal that's being brokered is the American people want the Save America Act. And so if you really want to see some housing reform passed, you really want to see some healthcare reform passed, you really want to see some immigration reform, some basic funding reform, you want to see the FISA court stuff pass the Senate, then attach the Save America Act to it. And through that, we actually see a new opportunity here because although some things are being passed kind of on the externals through like veto-proof measures, the president can just leave things on his desk and not sign them and string things out and along. And that creates a whole nother dimension here. And this has some Republican senators pretty pissed. Our Pedro Rodriguez today for this Daily Signal actually got a chance to talk to some of the senators, Senator Tommy Tuberville, as well as Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. Got a chance to actually sit down and ask with an exclusive series of statements to the Daily Signal about some of the obstructive Republicans and what the path forward looks like. So Roberts from the Heritage Foundation says, quote, Reconciliation 3.0, the economy stuff, it's the economy, stupid, only requires 51 votes in the Senate and could provide a major win by cracking down on fraud and alleviating the high cost of living for American families. Now, the Heritage Foundation has already released a detailed plan with popular high-impact reforms that Congress can implement. Heritage Action will be tracking which members of Congress fail to act in the interest of the American people. Republicans only have a guaranteed trifecta, and it's a crimped trifecta because you don't have the 60 in the Senate, which means the filibuster either has to do a talking filibuster, which means a simple majority vote that the Democrats can then put someone like Cory Booker up to talk until he's out of breath, and then it passes. Or you just nuke the filibuster entirely. That trifecta, only through the end of the year, and they should not be wasting it on more vacations, because as I told you yesterday, the Senate's getting ready to go on vacation. So America expects results, end quote. Now, that brings us to what's the actual good news here? What are we doing? What's the plan? Well, there was a big, huge Senate meeting today about this housing bill, about the Save America Act, and it resulted in a lot of Democrats walking out of it screaming and angry and mad and a lot of whining. President Trump, quite true to form, he steps up in front of the American people and says, well, actually, I think it was a pretty good meeting. Trump has a way of coming out of various meetings and saying, hey, you know what? Things are actually pretty great. It infuriates people because Trump is really never miffed by a shouting match style of meeting. Here was the president talking about this today.
I think we had a really great meeting, and we're very proud of the party.
Now, there are some people on the wings of the president here. So you have Senator Rick Scott next to the president of the United States from Florida. Of course, Rick Scott has been very hawkish on getting the Save America Act through. You have Senator Mike Lee of Utah right behind the president. Just out of the shot here, you also have John Thune. So it's to be a body language aficionado here, it's kind of a power play of saying, this is my Senate. Now, you may not be a fan of the old Roman Senate and Caesar, giving him the old jerk chain around, but every once in a while, throughout legislative histories and their executive branches, it's kind of interesting to see the body language play out.
We like our leader. We like everybody really in the room. I don't like a few people, but that's okay. I think you know who they are. But I'll give you that information someday. But for the most part, we have a really well unified party.
Now, what does this mean? Because so far, I've told you that the entire frame has shifted. What's the proof for it? Well, it comes in two forms. First of all, you now have senators breaking kind of a classic rule. So, yesterday, I played a clip in which Andrew Colvett, good friend, over at Turning Point USA. He's currently running the Charlie Kirk show. In a lot of the conversation, Andrew Colvett took a moment to ask Senator Lee, hey, why aren't we actually seeing the Save America Act passed? Who are the names of these Republican senators? And Mike Lee did not immediately start listing a series of senators. And the reason behind this is for this, for the general rules, you don't really go after members of your party and senators by name. It's not really something that you do. Now what you're seeing is actually a couple of senators who are kind of breaking that, because what is the main rule of order? Either put up or shut up. The establishmentarian really don't have a lot of capital anymore. Here is Senator Kennedy in an audio-only statement, but an exclusive to Daily Signal's Pedro Rodriguez. Check it out.
Because we're only going to get one bite at the apple. Okay.
Sir, Senator Scott has proposed voting.
Who are you, Nate?
I'm with the Daily Signal.
Okay.
Senator Rick Scott has suggested voting for the Save America Act every day until November.
I'm fine with that.
Do you think that's feasible?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with, I would like to, and I've encouraged Senator Thune to put the FISA bill with the SAVE Act on the floor. I'm for doing that. I'm for trying to do the SAVE Act through reconciliation. I'm okay with Mike, Senator Lee's idea that if we put it on the floor and talk enough that the Democrats would say, no mas, we give up.
Now, I said yesterday that just talking about it every day wasn't going to work. I would like to amend a small part here, saying that my interpretation of Senator Mike Lee yesterday, some of you reached out and actually asked about this, said, so Senator Mike Lee said, we're just going to talk about it until the Democrats get exhausted. What I thought he meant was that simply the first order of the Senate every single day is just going to be to talk about the Save America Act, and soon the Democrats will relent. What I realize that Mike Lee has clarified since then is that for the Save America Act, the United States Senate would institute the talking filibuster, so that the Senate could, bring on Cory Booker, and he could rant and rave, and his eyeballs could pop out of his head, and he could yell until he's blue in the face. If you actually get Susan Collins, Bill Cassidy, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell, who I know would go for it for national security reasons. Tom Tillis is kind of a maybe. But if you get those four to glue FISA and the Save America Act together, and then put that combined glued together package to a talking filibuster, could that work? Yeah, I mean, it actually could.
I'm fine with all of that.
And do you believe Senator Thune will follow up on that idea?
I have no idea. I think that's a good question you'd ask Senator Thune, Nate. Okay.
All right, so that is the comment over from Senator Kennedy. Senator Tommy Tuberville of the great state of Alabama, he made a similar statement. Pedro got a chance to actually ask him about this particular conversation and statement from Kennedy, and it kind of picks up from there. Check it out.
We need to get it passed.
Kennedy has also suggested merging the Save America Act with FISA. He suggested Thune should do it. Do you think that's something that leadership will take up?
Yeah, all you do is put a death wish on FISA, because we have people in our Congress who are going to vote for Save America Act. Never matter.
All right. Again, in the interest of very full transparency, the reason that you saw me just, do the old arm swinging Irish drinking song emotion there, I listened to the first part of this audio clip, not the end of it. You may not believe me. That's fine. I don't care. But we only got the audio enhanced with the AI right before the show. So I knew he was building off of Kennedy. I had no idea he would say, well, sure, leadership will bring it up. You just glue it to FISA or something. Hey, who just said that? Again, I realize that it's not as good because I'm the one who's queuing up these clips for you. That truly does reframe the whole thing.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So two things here. First and foremost, I want to issue a very huge shout out to our Pedro Rodriguez at the Daily Signal. I have said for ages, I have no idea where that congressional reporter for Lindell TV came from, that young lady who always seems to be getting questions and answers from members of Congress. But the last time we had Pedro Rodriguez on the show as an interview live from the halls of Congress, I challenged him to do this stuff. And the man delivered. That's some good stuff. I appreciate that. And then number two, the other thing is that the Democrats' response to this strategy is you can tell that there is you can tell there's some panic and fear going on about this because yeah, I mean, what you see is Chuck Schumer going full mealy-mouth and trying to convince himself that it's all going to be okay. Guys, I just don't see it. Here's the big response. Schumer's trying to act really like confident, and this is all he's bringing to the table.
The GOP will continue going along with Trump's all-out assault on voting rights with legislation like the SAVE Act. If my colleagues across the aisle have any sense at all, they ought to grill Trump on affordability, on his failed war with Iran, on his effort to hold American national security hostage.
Do you hear that? So if Trump had failed today, I saw a comment over on the live stream said, Trump got absolutely nothing today. Oh, it's whatever. If Trump had failed today, after this meeting, if you came out here and we saw, the smiling senators were actually Tom Tillis and Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, and it wasn't Bill Cassidy looking flustered. If it wasn't Rick Scott grinning right next to President Trump. If it wasn't Thune standing kind of into the background, kind of, hand over hand, thinking like, well, looks like here's where we are. Schumer would be leading with that. Schumer would say, the Republicans have failed once again to bring their failed priorities of suppressing Americans. No, what's he saying? Republicans are mean and stinky and they're sticking to it. And then he immediately starts reading the script.
And all his other policies that are hurting the American people.
Uh-huh.
When they emerge from their meeting, will Republicans have told Trump the truth? Will they speak truth to power? Will they do their job? Or will they just bend in obeisance to him and get more frustrated, more angry, more ineffective than they've ever been? On the Iran powers resolution, the successful
Yeah, and then he says, oh, the successful passage of the Iran, oh, it's so great and wonderful, it's going to change everything. It ain't. It absolutely is not. Now, again, we've talked about the squad a lot today on the show, and I would really not be doing my job if I didn't get a chance to make fun of the person losing her mind on the squad side. That would be Pramila Jayapal. Now, I love this because Pramila Jayapal has the charisma of a 2-month-old dried up Fig Newton, but she just keeps on trying. Again, if you want more Pramila Jayapals to be the leader of your party, then that's what the squad members coming out of New York City are promising.
Buying a home is unattainable for so many Americans. Is this election legislation more important to you than resolving the housing crisis?
This is every election's important. We're doing very well. They want a lot of communists to come in. I'm saying it a little bit differently, but the people that they're pushing are communists, and this country is not going to have communists. Thank you very much.
So that's the president, setting up the squad. Jayapal was asked, right after this, basically, that was what was prompted to her.
This is totally crazy. Donald Trump just canceled the signing ceremony for the big bipartisan housing bill we passed called the Road to Housing that would help people across this country afford their housing, one of the top issues, and it would also ban institutional investors from buying up all the housing and making your housing unaffordable. It was all set to sign. He had the whole stage set up, and then he just came on and insisted he's not going to sign it until we pass the
Here we go.
unpassable and totally illegal.
So it's not just unpassable because she knows now it's passable. She wouldn't call it unpassable if it actually had something of substance to pass it. She's characterizing the bill. And then she knows that's not enough because, again, it's passable now. So what's she going to do? She's going to pivot. She's going to give us the old...
Answer there, the Daily Double.
She's going to give us the old Daily Double. So not only is she said it's unpassable, but it's illegal. Ooh. It's illegal, she says.
Unpassable and totally illegal SAVE Act.
It's not. Not even remotely, slightly kind of illegal. Supreme Court precedent, by the way, already paves the way. Did you guys know, boys and girls, that it's actually the Supreme Court of the United States that actually paved the way? Of all things, I know this is kind of crazy. They paved the way in a lot of their recent decisions to actually get some of this stuff across the floor. And the House and the Senate, in writing a lot of the provisions for the Save America Act, it turns out that they followed the Supreme Court of the United States rulings so that it would be legal.
Correct! Circle gets a square.
So Pramila Jayapal, retarded as usual, very, very exciting.
Which is all about trying to blame immigrants and take away voting rights for people.
There it is. Yeah, and then one last fail swoop, play the race victim card. It's all about demonizing immigrants and brown people and the person who I don't pay to cut my lawn.
Across this country. So this is who we have in the White House. He is taking away your housing for his personal projects that can never pass and are unconstitutional.
Yeah, that's super duper special. Thank you very much for sharing. As usual, again, though he has been lambasted in his own way quite consistently over the last couple of years, it is once again Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who has probably made a better case, and by the way, has passed more legislation with this tight of a majority than I think we have seen in a very, very long time. But Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, made a case today that I also think is worth sharing.
Country, it is a dangerous thing. This is not a joke. We're in a fight right now to save the republic. And every American needs to take this seriously. You need to wake up. This upcoming midterm election is not the midterm elections of years ago. This is going to decide the direction of the country. Are we going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic on our 250th anniversary? Or are we going to make a new choice and go down some road towards a communist utopia? That's the choice right now.
So this is what the Democrats have to sell to the American people. If Republicans actually do pull it together, and if there is some crafty, normally the Democrats are kind of famous for getting some of their more progressive caucuses to work together by gluing things together that, like, you'd have a corporatist kind of thing that at the time back when big tech was more liberal, big tech would kind of glue some like pro big tech Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi style measure with like the hyper young progressivists something. And that's how they would try to move legislation through. And all of the Democrats would then fall in line. And then you would have Republicans who would argue and quibble over passing very small legislation. And when you have large scale majorities, you can afford to do that. Right now you have a very thin majority. So what's been really bizarre to see, just from, again, this seat here, now moving over to the analysis side of things, it's very, very strange to watch as the Republicans are now operating in a far more organized manner and utilize the same tactics that the Democrats used to use to get people in line. If the establishment gets routed here by gluing together something that the establishmentarian candidates really want, the FISA stuff they really want, that's likely to be the mechanism. Again, not yours truly saying this. That would be Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama confirming today in the exclusive statement to the Daily Signal. If that's the mechanism, then that actually is a pretty effective strategic way of getting a very contested, very slim majority to operate.